thank you to all the Sangat for coming today, for the Katha, Kirtan, for Satguru Ji Maharaj Ji's Sukha Sindhi Seva. So very blessed to have been here for all these different things, right? So very blessed. So now we have the start of a special Q&A. Just a few binte before we start. The first thing is that we're going to start with the Sri Chaupai Sahib, just to get Guru Sahib's blessings. So what a great way to start, just by asking Guru Sahib for their sisa, for their blessings. One more binti as well is that again today we're here for a special Q&A, and I'm sure most of you guys have seen the documentary as well. But also we don't want it to get heated. The one thing that really stands out to me is that, you know, we're in the home of Guru Sahib Ji. So Guru Ghar, Gurdwara Sahib. Here, the main thing we should be doing is praising our Guru. If we're in the darbar of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, then what should be happening in Maharaj's darbar is Maharaj's sift, Maharaj's jas, Maharaj's praises. So let's make this the essence of everything they're asking, that it draws back to Guru Sahib Ji. So like was mentioned in the Katha, the Hukamnama Sahib that came this morning at Amrit Vela, and this Gurdwara Sahib this morning was Har Jana Ram Naam Gun Gave, Je Koi Nind Kare Har Jan Ki Apna Gun Na Gavave. So what does that mean? Guru Sahib is saying Har Jan. He's saying, oh my servants. Harida Jan, sing Har Jan Ram Naam Gun Gave. Sing Guru Sahib Ji's gun, sing their virtues, sing their praises. And they say, if Je koi nind kare har jan ki. If anybody slanders, you know, a Guru Sikh, a servant of Vaheguru Ji, if they slander Vaheguru Ji, Maharaj Ji says themselves, apna gun na gavave. Why would you want to lose your own gun and slander them back? They're saying, why would you want to do that for? Everything that you've built up so hard, like we said in the Katha, all of that, and now you want to do Nindya yourself. So, apana guna na gavave. Just remember that. Don't use your own gun. Har jana ram naam guna gave. So, just before we start, and then I invite just Veer Singh up and Bibi Sukhmani Kaur up as well. If we could just start with a Chaupai Sahib. So, if we could just close our eyes, backs up straight. Again, it's in Sangat Roop, so I don't want to just hear my own voice, otherwise you're just going to hear me coughing the whole time. Okay? So please join in, and let's do this benti to Guru Maharaj Ji. Ke Maharaj Ji kirpa karo, naam di daat baksho, ate apna gun na gavave. Don't let us lose our gun. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh. एक ओंकार श्री वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह है। पात साई दसवीं कबियो बाच बेनती चौपाई। हमरी करो हाथ रे रक्षा, पूर्ण होए चित्त की इच्छा। तव चरण मन रहे हमारा, अपना जान करो प्रतिपारा। हमरे दुष्ट सबे तुम गावहो, आप हाथ दे मोहि बचावहो। सेवक सिख सबे करतारा, मोर अच्छा निज कर दे करिय। सबे रिन कहो आर संघरिय, पूर्ण होए हमारी आशा। तोर भजन की रहे प्यासा, तुम्हें छाड़ कोई अवर न त्याऊँ। जो पर चाहो सो तुम ते पाऊँ। सेवक सिख हमारे तारिय है, चुन चुन सतर हमारे मारिय है। आप हाथ दे मुझे अबरिय, मरण काल का त्रास न वरिय। पूजो सदा हमारे पच्छा, राखिल हो मोहे राखन हारे। साहिब संत सहाय प्यारे, दीन बंद दुष्टन के हंता। तुम हो पुरी चतुर्दश कंता, काल पाए ब्रह्मा बपतरा। काल पाए शिव जू अवतरा, काल पाए कर विष्णु प्रकाशा। सकल काल का किया तमाशा, जवन काल जोगी शिव कियो। वेद राज ब्रह्मा जू थियो, नमस्कार है ताय हमारा। जवन काल सब जगत बनायो देव दैत जच्छन पजायो आद अंत एक अवतारा सोई गुरु समझियो हमारा नमस्कार तिस ही को हमारी सकल प्रजा जिन आप सवारी सिवकन को सब गुण सुख दियो सतरंग को पल मोह बद कियो घट घट के अंतर की जानत भले बुरे की पीर पछानत चीटी ते कुंचर असथूला संतन दुख पाए ते दुखी सुख पाए साधन के सुखी एक एक के पीर पछानै घट घट के पट पट की जानै प्रजा धरत तब देह अपारा जब आकर्ख करत हो कब हूँ तुम मैं मिलत देह धर सब हूँ जेते बदन सृष सब धारै आप आपनी बूझ उचारै तुम सब ही ते रहत निरालम जानत भेद भेद अर आलम निरंकार निरभिकार निरलंब आद अनील अनाद असंभ ताका मूढ़ उचारत भेदा जाको पेव न पावत बेदा ताको कर पाहन उन्मानत महामूढ़ कछ भेद न जानत महादेव कौ कहत सदा शिव निरंकार का चीनत नह पिव आप आपनी बुद्ध है जेती बरनत भिन्न भिन्न तोहि तेती तुमरा लखन जाय पिसारा कह बिद सजा प्रथम संसारा एक रूप अनूप स्वरूपा रंग भयो राव कह पूपा अंडज जेरज से तजकीनी उत भुज खान बोहर रज दीनी कहो फूल राजा हवै बैठा कहो सिमट भयो शंकर कैठा सिगरी सृष्ट दिखाया चंभव आद जुगाद स्वरूप श्याम भव अब रक्षा मेरी तुम करो सिख अबार असिख संगरो सकल मलेच्छ करो रन घाता जे अस तुध तव सरनी पारे तिनके दुष्ट दुख मारे पुरख जवन पग परे तहारे तिनके तुम संकट सब टारे जो कल कौ एक बार तिय है ताके काल निकट नह है रक्षा होए ताहे सब काला दुष्ट अरिष्ट रह तत्काला कृपा दृष्टन जाहे नहर हो ताके ताव तिनक मह हर हो रिद्ध सिद्ध कर मो सब होई एक बार जिन तुम्हें संभारा काल फासते ताय बारा जिन नर नाम तिहारो कहा खड्ग केत मैं सरन तहारी आप हाथ दे लेहो अबारी खड्ग केत मैं सरन तहारी आप हाथ दे लेहो अबारी किते लेहो बचाई कृपा करी हम पर जग माता ग्रंथ करा पूरन सुबराता किल बिख सकल देह को हरता श्री अस्तुजा भय दयाला पूरन करा ग्रंथ तत्काला मन बांछत फल पावै सोई अरिल सुनै गुंग जो याहे सरस ना पावै सुनै मूढ़ चित लाय चतुरदा आवै दुख दर्द पाओ निकट न तिन नर के रहै हो जो या की एक बार चौपई को कहे चौपई अर्ध सहस पुन तीन के हिजै भादरव सुदी अष्टमी रविवार तीरस तद्रव ग्रंथ सुधारा सवैया पाए गहे जब ते तुमरे तब ते को आखत रे नहीं आन्यो राम रहीम पुराण कुरान अनेक कहें मत एक न मान्यो सिमरत शास्त्र वेद सबै बहु भेद कहे हम एक न जान्यो श्री असपान कृपा तुमरी कर मैं न कहियो सब तोहे बखान्यो दोहरा सगल द्वार को छाड़ कै गहियो तोहार द्वार माहे गहे की लाज अस गोबिंद दास तोहार सगल द्वार को छाड़ कै गहियो तोहार द्वार माहे गहे की लाज अस वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह. Okay, so we'll take questions from the panel, sorry, not from the panel, from the Sangat, but also we have questions that we've been given through Instagram and Facebook and other social media platforms. Did you want to speak at the start? ठीक है जी, हाँ जी.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So my name is Jasveer Singh. I work for the Sikh Press Association. That means I'm an employee of Everything's 13. That's the charity Jagraj Singh started. Did seva for them starting in around 2014, the middle of 2014, and became an employee in April 2015 and still employee today. Just for context about why I'm speaking, I'm going to just address a few points in terms of the general kind of sentiment and consensus from the organization and a lot of our close sangat about the documentary, which will hopefully answer quite a few questions, and then we can probably get into perhaps a deeper context about the documentary, and also be conscious that this space here was created by Jagraj Singh for learning about Sikhi itself, rather than discussion about things that kind of are rotating around Sikhi. Instead, if we can focus on Sikhi itself, that would be great. But to start with, I'll just try and go over a few points about the documentary, like I said, to hopefully answer a lot of your questions. So to begin with, the documentary itself, and perhaps why there is quite a lot of people within at least the Sangat that I affiliate with, and from a lot of the comments that I've seen that view the documentary in a negative fashion, is because I think a big reason is it was advertised as about the legacy of Jagraj Singh. I think looking back, those that know about Jagraj Singh and know about his work could safely say that it excluded a lot about what is considered his legacy. One of the Rijis in the Sangat just touched on the fact that Tere Pantvase wasn't mentioned, and there's 3 other organizations that Jagraj Singh himself helped create: Kiddy Sangat, the Sikh Press Association, and Mighty Khalsa, that again weren't explored in any way at all. So a slight sense of false advertising in the description of what the documentary was about, exploring the legacy of Jagraj Singh. Even to the extent the title of the documentary, Young, Sick and Proud, went against something that Jagraj Singh taught. He used to say, we shouldn't be proud of Sikhi, we should be grateful for it. And that is a real change in mindset for a lot of us. I know for me in particular, it was of how we view Sikhi and how we take to it in terms of, it's a gift, it's something we should be grateful for. So that, to begin with, again, it didn't really reflect the legacy of Jagraj Singh. And he's on record, even on the BBC himself, saying his legacy is his work with Everything's 13. Next, the points that were brought up in the documentary. I think plain and simply, there was a clear lack of balance from those that would be aware of these situations about the topics that were brought up. For example, interfaith, Anand Karaj. If I asked people that watched the documentary, what did they say about when the last protest was? Most people wouldn't have an answer because they didn't mention when the last protest was. The last protest was in 2016. If I asked what the documentary said about Jagraj Singh's role in helping curtail those protests, people wouldn't have an answer for me because, again, the documentary didn't mention that he helped implement a course with various other Sikh organizations that Gurdwaras could now run for couples that were looking to partake in an Anand Karaj, so they're aware of the meaning and context of it. There's several other points, but I don't want to just go into every single one. But again, the next topic that was brought up, next situation or incident or flashpoint, as the guys around the team would call them, as in the documentary team, the incident about celebrating Vaisakhi in a mosque. This happened about 2 years after Bhai Sahib had passed away. So the relevance in terms of his legacy, for me, there is none. So the fact that it was brought up, I mean, you can make up your own minds about why it was brought up. And I mean, there's a discussion to be had about whether we, as a community, would want to celebrate Vaisakhi in the mosque in the first place as well. Then on to the protests against the police and a ban against police presence in Sangat circles. If I asked you why according to the show, that ban is in place, most people wouldn't have an answer because, again, they didn't give any context about that situation at all. Like, literally, they didn't say anything about it. It was just suddenly brought up that there is a ban and a protest going on against police. And that's something, you know, I can happily answer questions on. Even the mention of Khalistan, I think the exact words were Khalistan, because certain British Sikhs don't feel welcome or at home here in Britain, there's a movement for Khalistan. I think anyone who knows anything about the topic would say that left out so much. So in general, these are examples of a clear lack of balance. And from a perspective of Everything's 13, the key thing is always prachar. Any opportunity like this is an opportunity for education. And I don't think that was met. This doesn't mean the program was completely bad and everyone has to have a negative view of it. There's a lot of touching moments. If we look at it purely from a media perspective of, you know, how we take in TV shows, I'm sure everyone kind of, you know, there were some heartfelt moments that touched all of us. And the team behind the documentary, they have every right to do a documentary on Jagraj Singh, especially run by his brother. Of course they do, and they're more than welcome to do it. But again, if we want to do it justice, I think that's the key thing. If we want to do this kind of topic justice, if we want to do it in a way that really reflects the legacy of Bhai Jagraj Singh and the work that he did, then there was a lot that should have been included. And just to summarize, I would say it done none of the topics or none of any, even the title justice, in the sense that it didn't properly explore Jagraj Singh's legacy, and the topics brought up, it didn't even do them justice in the sense of giving them balance and context. So therefore, that's why a lot of people view it definitely from, in my opinion, in a negative way. But again, we don't need to kind of focus on that too much. I think the Hukamnama today downstairs is absolutely amazing and puts it all into context. So I think hopefully that answers a lot of your questions.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I'm going to speak a little bit as well, kind of answering a few of the questions that we got from through social media. One of the questions is, one of Jagraj Singh's last interviews was on the Sunny and Shay show on BBC Radio. Why do you think this was not mentioned on the recent documentary? This interview that they're talking about was recorded 2 weeks before he passed away, something like this. And he is saying that his legacy is the project base of Sikhi Academy. So he saw that this actually was most important for him at the very end. And currently we are not doing the base of Sikhi Academy. The project, I briefly describe it to you, that it's a 6-month course that people take out 6 months of their life, like Sukhdeep Singh Virji has done, and learn to do prachar. And Jagraj saw this as his most important project. And I mean, the proof is sitting next to me. I mean, without a future generation of pracharaks, we cannot connect with the youth. And other questions actually which can be answered from this is, how can we get youth back into Sikhi like Jagraj did? Is we have to keep inspiring people to share their knowledge and to touch hearts, and this only can be done through personal experience and personal practice and personal dedication. Other question: were basics of Sikhi or Sikh PA asked for any input in regards to the recent documentary? So I'll briefly answer this question as well. I was approached personally to be part of the documentary, and I was very hesitant because all the things that we're discussing now as kind of negative points, they were obvious from beginning. And what we try to do as a charity, we try to say, look, we will take part if we can influence the positive, kind of the balanced view. So if we can include the pracharak into the documentary, if we include somebody from same kind of background, maybe from Basic of Sikhi interview somebody from Basic of Sikhi as a pracharak, or any other respected person who is in kind of a spiritual weight, rather than just kind of academics or journalists or police people, you know, so to kind of bring that spiritual value, a spiritual weight to the documentary. And when this wasn't happening, we said, look, we cannot take part because anything we try to suggest to you, you don't really value it. So for that basis, I think we decided not to take part as a charity, because we saw that they had their own agenda from beginning, and whatever way we would go or suggest, whichever way, it wasn't really kind of there was no response to that. So for that reason, we decided not to take part as a charity, but obviously individual people were interviewed, but in the end, I think it was only my interview from everybody who was in the charity that was included. Yeah, so.
Just to add to that, so I think it was probably about 2, perhaps maybe 3 months that we were aware that this was being planned and put into place before an approach was made directly to the organization to speak to us. That came to the Sikh Press Association, and it was from the director, Nick Harrons, who wanted to meet with us. So the Sikh Press Association team met with him, and it became apparent from our meeting that this documentary wasn't something that would be, in our perspective, a fair reflection of Bhai Jagraj Singh's legacy. There's very few, if any at all, questions on the work of Everything's 13. There was no kind of push to, you know, can we come and film, for example, this beautiful thing that Jagraj Singh started, the Q&A, the Katha in English, things like that. So yeah, we had a meeting amongst ourselves as a team, and we decided the best option was for us to not be involved at all. So we didn't get involved, because all they wanted from us as at the Sikh Press Association was access into covering what they called flashpoints, which is what I mentioned earlier, flashpoints within the Sikh community that they viewed as important.
Yeah. Has anyone from the Sangat got any questions they wanted to ask as well? Or any points you wanted to raise as well? Nobody. It's like a standard Sunday Q&A. Nobody asks a Q&A when no one asks questions, just answers. Hanji Harkirat Singh. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh Ji.
It was funny because in the documentary suddenly said that we need to have open discussion as Sikhs, and this is what Jagraj Singh started really. He did start as all this years ago in 2014. He started this Q&A system. We can have open discussion as Sikhs. But my main question is probably towards Benji really. There's a question about Sukhdeep Singh before we give another answer. It's about the army aspect of Jagraj Singh. Did he ever actually discuss his army life with you? Or about, because he was a visionary and he was always thinking forward, did he have a vision of where the Sikh should go in an army aspect?
So the question was, has Jagraj Singh ever discussed his army experience and his vision for why he originally joined the army? He has, and whatever is represented in the documentary by my father-in-law, I kind of disagree with that strongly. But from what he told me, that when he joined the army, originally he wanted to join because he was kind of indirectly promised that he could influence the revival of Sikh regiment. Kind of when he was recruited, he was kind of hinted that if he joins and more Sikhs join, then the Sikh regiment potentially could be revived in the British Army. But obviously, as he, after a few years, he realized that it's not happening at all. They had no interest in Sikhs. It was just kind of like, you know, making numbers in different ethnicities. That's what they really were interested in, rather than actually creating any faith-based regiments. And after that, he went into recruitment within the army. So he left the regiment he was in. And basically from there, he just was getting more and more disheartened, because whatever that was promised in the beginning, it was not happening at all. But original was a Sikh regiment, if this answers your question.
Anyone else? Any other points or questions? Hanji. Hanji Vaheguru.
It's not really a question, it's more a point that I had wanted to raise. Like I said, just for you, from stages, it did seem like quite, there were some heartfelt moments, and it seemed that people committed were going to just show Jagraj Singh's legacy. But I do agree with your points that it did seem quite, I mean, then within the first, from 5 minutes onwards, it just started focusing on controversies and things which weren't at all to do with Jagraj Singh's legacy. But the only thing that I wanted to comment on was the backlash that Jagraj Singh's brother got on social media. I mean, I think us as Sikhs we need to be careful because it becomes so toxic. Like if you scroll through Twitter, Instagram, the backlash that he was getting. I mean, we talk about wanting to inspire the youth, but when you see Upper there and people who have now come into Sikhi talking down to someone, but we're absolutely discriminating someone so badly. And I just want to say that I think we need to be more careful with how we spread that message. 100% I agree that he didn't point out the beauties of the amazing things that Jagraj Singh done and focus on his legacy and just started doing whatever agenda he had, he started focusing on those, unfortunately. But I think us as Gursikhs need to be more careful as how we talk to people and how we address that message, because I don't think it was rightly done, especially on social media.
Hanji Vaikru, that is definitely something that we should all be conscious of, and an area where I'm definitely guilty of doing a disservice to Sikhi by some of our reactions. I have to add in that the reaction you see is an example of the frustration when Sikhs that are active, that are involved, and that are actually connected to the Sangat and to people like Jagraj Singh and the prachar that he gave, when they are constantly left on the sidelines and closed off from these spaces where these dialogues really set the tones and narratives of who the Sikhs are and the Sikh community. Because whilst there was a lot of talking away from the response of Sangat and the average Sikh that might have felt this did a disservice to Jagraj Singh, there was also a lot of negative reaction from the average watcher who was like, there's messages that have been forwarded on to me which talk about Sikh militancy, Sikh radicalism. They talk about, this documentary is very troubling insight into what's going on within the Sikh community. So I can sympathize with that reaction. It doesn't mean it justifies it, but for me, part of the way to resolve that kind of reaction is to open up those spaces and actually have dialogue. Because, like Viji said, this space is somewhere where Sangat can come together and we can discuss various issues. The Sikh Press Association, we've run different discussion forums, we call them, on various topics: gender inequality, Khalistan, mental health, Sikhs involved in politics, where we're trying to create those spaces where we can have those discussions so people can get a real insight and authentic insight into those Sikhs that are helping to run organizations and have a real understanding of what's going on at a grassroots level. And when there's constantly an attempt to kind of sideline those people, then you're really provoking a certain type of reaction. So you're 100% right, and I just want to focus on how we can stop that kind of reaction, because if we sit here and say everyone reacting that way is wrong, that's just a judgment. Rather than a judgment, I think the best thing to do is actually try and progress. And for me, what I'd say to documentary makers or anyone that's keen to do media stories on the Sikh community is, come sit with us, come actually have a conversation. Just be open enough to try and take an understanding from a direct route rather than from looking outside the window in. So yeah, just trying to put that into context.
Just to add to your point as well, VG, I don't really use social media, but I did see a few comments on there as well from a Singh who just forwarded it to me, of someone close in Sangat, and it was quite sad to see the kind of comments they were making as well. But it goes back to one of the questions that was on Instagram, which is about how do we inspire the youth, right? But this is why Prachar is so important, right? That we focus on Prachar of Sikhi. Because even when we do Prachar, sometimes it just falls off and we go on a different path. Right? So Maharaj says, Khanyo tikhi, valho nikki. This path is very fine. Right? We feel like, I'm guilty of this as well, we feel like we're doing the right thing doing Prachar, but our Prachar is based off personal emotions. Right? And it's not based upon Prachar of Sikhi of Guru Sahib. It's hard to differentiate between the two sometimes, right? Because we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And it's quite funny because I saw Viji this morning. He came to Santhia, right? So my usual plug for Gurbani Santhia. Why? Because you build your relationship with your Guru. But after Santhia, the Guru Mukh who does the Katha there, they're going through the Bani of Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji Maharaj. So on 9th Guru, for those you don't know, it's their 400th Prakash Purab next year. So 400 years since Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji came on this earth. Right? So we have to join people back to our Gurus, to Itihas, to our Gurbani. Right? And in that Bani, when they do Katha, it's so beautiful, and they gave us so much Gyan, and they enlightened us so much on what is our state. Right? And I'll just go, it's a very short Shabad, but again, this is what we're here to do. Do Parachar of Sikhi. The Maharaji says, Sadho him is a speaker to all the Sangat. One arth, saying to all the Sangat are here, Sadho, ehe man gehe na jai. That this ehe man, this mind of ours, gehe na jai, we cannot control it. Right? This mind of ours is very hard to control. And it says, Chanchalat Risna Sangha Basta hai, is very chanchal, it's very fickle. It doesn't sit still. Right? Just like how, look how chanchal our mind is today. We're always on social media scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Right? Fickle, very fickle. Trisna, and it's filled with desires. Sangha Basta hai. This is what our mind is filled with. These two things is chanchalata, to be chanchal, and to have Trishna, have desires. Yate thirna rahai, rahau, and it's not sathir. It's not still. And this next line relates to your point, how many people felt. They say, Kathana karod, katahi ke pitar. That we're filled with anger. Yeah? And what happens when we get angry, and I'm sure a lot of people can understand this as well. They go, when somebody gets angry, this is what Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji says, it says, Kathana karod. Well, it's not just any anger, it's like really bad anger. They go, Jeh sud sab bisarai. They go, they forget who they are at that moment. They forget everything they're doing and they just start going crazy. And then after they think, why did I do that for? Why did I react in that way? Right? But when somebody's angry, they lose all soji, they lose all understanding, right? And they have no idea what's going on. Right? So it's just to get to another main essence of the Shabad. They say, Jogi jatan karta sabhare, guni rahe gunagai. That we try many different ways to get Shanti, to connect to Vaiguruji. Right? Jogi jatan karta sabhare. But everything is not working. Guni rahe gunagai. And we even try to sing God's praises. We do part. I'm sure everyone in this room probably does part. Right? But we're doing this, but for some reason we're still getting involved in Krodh. We come into Sangat. What Maharaji is saying is that you don't stop doing part, you don't stop doing Seva, you don't stop doing Simran, but we have to lose that ego. We cannot do Seva when there's Homme. It's not Parvan. Right? I've been told that many times myself as well. Where there's ego, that Seva is not Parvan. Right? And this is the thing, until Guru Sajas Kirpa, Jana Nanaka, Harape de Allah. Until Maharaji has taras upon us, has mercy upon us, does Kirpa, then we're not going to understand. To sab bed ban aaye, then we start to understand what Maharaji is saying. So this is why we need to come and we need to learn about our Gurus. We need to learn about Gurbani. We need to start reading Gurbani. Look how busy it is right now. Today we've come together because this documentary, which is blessed, Lord Kirpa. But where these things are happening, where classes are happening to learn how to read Gurbani, I'm going to keep going on about it, right? But on a Tuesday evening or Sunday morning, you won't find this many people want to learn to read Gurbani, right? You won't see this many people want to ask questions about how can I get closer to Guru Sahib Ji, right? So how are we to inspire youth if the youth don't want to ask these kind of questions, right? They don't want to be in these spaces. So one respect for that question as well, it's not just on our side. Sometimes you always look at the people who are doing the parachar, doing the seva, they should be doing more, but we need to take responsibility ourselves for our actions. Right? We need to take responsibility and think, what can I do now? If I can come on a Sunday evening for this, then why don't I come every evening to see my Guru go to Sachkhand? Tika? So if you want to inspire the youth, you have to inspire yourself as well. Right? We have to make that step, but I'll leave it there. Sorry, went on a bit one. Do you want to add anything? Any other questions? Any question from Instagram?
So we have a question from social media. What are basics doing to carry on legacy of Jagraj Singh? So, and as you know, Basics of Sikhi's YouTube channel is still going, and we going down the list of the YouTube videos that he wanted to make. He wanted to make Sulok Malanova Katha, Asadivar Katha. There's many more projects in place and being filmed, being recorded. That's all coming out. There's Virji's been carrying on weekly katha, obviously, in Park Avenue Gurdwara. There's monthly talks in Manchester, right? You're doing monthly talks in Manchester, Birmingham, Smethwick, trying to cover more areas. Do we carry on doing the street chart tours, talks in new areas. This year we're starting Singh's Camp, right? We have a course camp for last 3 years, and this year we're starting Singh's Camp. So this is very important because kind of camp was the starting point for Jagraj. That was his turning point, and literally he went to the camp as a Mona and came back into comrade within like next day after the camp finished. So that was a turning point, and it is an inspirational experience which you can't really have anywhere else ever. I hope this answers the question.
Just to add to that very quickly, in terms of the prachar that we're blessed to do, just speaking from experience, there's so much seva available, right? There's so much to do. And I'm sure other Guru Sikhs who have seva as well, they realize it's not a part-time job. It's not even a full-time job. It's literally becomes our lives. Right? Literally every single day, there's not a day where there's not something we have to do, right? And there's programs always coming in, requests, right? So there's so much seva available, right? And it's not just us, basis of Sikhi things 13. It's everyone, right? So just saying that in terms of when it comes to basics and prachar, we've got so much going. Like it's funny joke that I say to like Benji when I have my reviews that the only time I get a break from prachar is when I go out of the country to India, right? Because when I'm in England, it doesn't stop, right? So just when it comes to the academy, for example, like we don't have the academy now, but we still do teach Sangat. We do teach. We have a class. Don't want to go into too much but we still teach Singhs every other week, right? So we have about 7-8 Singhs who come to learn how to do prachar. So it's happening, but it's not happening on the scale that it wanted before. But sometimes we have to downscale, right? Sometimes we take a step back, but then we have to look to the future, right? Because who knows who's going to be here tomorrow, right? Who knows who's going to go tomorrow, right? So it's about, having other people come forward and do that seva as well, because who knows, right? So in terms of prachar and basis of Sikhi, things 13 there's so much to do, right? I remember with Bhai Jagraj Singh, I used to sit in the car with them. I wasn't really doing seva at that time. I just came in to do seva, and it was like really scary sitting in the car with them, right? It's like very awkward. And I go, it's Bhai Jagraj Singh, right? And just sitting there. And in the car, they'd always be knocking out. They'd just be always falling asleep because they'd be traveling from Nottingham back to Midlands, then to London, then to Milton Keynes the next day, right? And then back to Southall for Katha, and it was just non-stop. And those few times I was blessed to go along and just see that, and there was no stopping, right? But again, for one person to do that is very difficult. The more people that can do that seva, the better, and the more places we can reach, right? There's Nottingham that ask us to do prachar monthly, but we can't go there, right? Manchester wanted weekly, but we can't give weekly, so we did monthly, right? Birmingham doesn't have, they wanted us to come weekly as well, but we couldn't go there weekly, right? But hopefully soon we can do that again with Bhai Jagraj Singh if Marj's Kirpa. But there's so many places, Southampton, right? So much, right, that is needed, right? So in terms of when it comes to questions about like things 13 and prachar, it's just the same. It's just so much to do, right? But the more people that can get involved and do that seva, the better.
Just to add 2 quick points, we do have Harmon Singh in Canada as well, who is covering the whole of Canada with trying to cover the whole of Canada with his prachar, with his work, and Gurpreet Kaur Panji, who's covering Southeast Asia, which is 4 countries for one person, which is pretty a big commitment. Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and Indonesia, and she's been running camps and talks and Kiddie Sangat and doing so much work, and she's by herself pretty much. There is no kind of support team around her. So yeah, we need more people.
Just to add from a Sikh Press Association perspective about maintaining the legacy of Jagraj Singh, we were set up, just I guess paraphrasing, but to help challenge the narrative around Sikhi and the Sikh community as it is portrayed in the media. And this is something that we work on in many different ways, and every single day connecting with the media, connecting with people from Sangat to push relevant and important stories from the Sikh community to the media and vice versa. And we're also always trying to add to that. So just at the start of this year, we did an event giving an insight into how Sikhs can get further in the filmmaking and creative writing industry. We've held several different discussion forums that I've mentioned, and the first one started, I think, just a few weeks before Baisab passed. We're always looking for new angles to kind of do what we're doing. We're trying to build up our staff, we're trying to further our reach, and we're just always trying to stay as innovative as possible, because that was something that Bhai Jagraj Singh excelled at, and also trying to stay consistent in what we do, because keep that work rate which he started. So yeah, I mean, if anyone has any further questions, you can always speak to us afterwards, or even email in about how we're trying to maintain that legacy.
It's not really a question, but just some observations from the documentary. What you're saying about how Sikhs are in the media and everything, it's just that I'm just going to not mix my words here. When I looked at the documentary, I did really feel that everything was cleverly plotted. It seemed like it was cleverly plotted for Sikhs to look quite fundamentalist in my eyes. So I'm looking at it not from someone who knew Bhai Jagraj Singh, which I did, just as the average viewer. And if I was to look at that from those eyes, I'd think, wow, this is like so full on now. These guys are really full on. The only time Sikhs looked kind of, moderate and kind of down to earth was literally at the camp scene when he saw they were doing Simran, and that was like that's kind of like the only time where I thought, okay, cool. The average viewer can actually see this is kind of what Sikhi is about now. I think when the interviews came in, when he was interviewing some of the people, more things or singing out in those kind of environments, those spaces, then there's media sort of spaces, like you said, the arts environment and the film, television environment to get those things going on. Because
so the question is if we think that we need more Sikhs in the media industry, in all spheres of the media industry, from reporting to creative writing and filmmaking. And most definitely, from my perspective, we 100% need that. Working for 5 years now for the Sikh Press Association, I don't think I have ever met one Amritdari Sikh that works for any media outlet. That we've worked with countless, and I don't think I've met one Amritdari Sikh. I think that tells you a lot about kind of where the direction will come from when it comes to people internally within these media organizations, and they're looking for somebody to give them direction on the Sikh issue. So definitely. And I think the example you gave of the different types of perceptions of a moderate Sikh versus the more fundamentalist Sikh is important, because one thing to remember is a lot of those people that might be involved in like those protests against the Gurdwaras running interfaith and colleges and so forth, they're actually a lot of the Sikhs that would also be helping to run camps. So they're the same people. There's no differentiation between, who is a moderate and who is a fundamentalist. It's just at the right time, any Sikh can stand up and speak out against something which is injustice and be portrayed in that fashion. Whereas at the same time, if that same Sikh would be doing langar seva in the streets for the homeless, then they're portrayed a completely different way. But actually, they're one and completely the same. And, there shouldn't be any differentiation between, who is a moderate and who isn't, because those terms don't really fit with Sikhi. So yeah, we definitely need more Sikhs in media, and we definitely need to further our ambitions. I know we've got quite a few really, really talented documentary makers within the Sikh community, and I guess we just, as a community, those especially of us that are aware of their existence, we need to get behind them. We need to support them. We need to make sure that they're getting those big views by sharing their content and so forth, and we need to give their work a sense of value and importance that we perhaps would do to other shows that might be non-affiliated to Sikhi. So yeah, there's a lot of work we can do internally to further that too. Any other questions, Sangaji? Or any online?
Marji Kirpa. That's all we can say. Marji Kirpa. Benji can answer that after I answer my question. What was Jagraj Singh's advice, Bhai Jagraj Singh's advice on connecting with Sikhi without Sangat? So I'm from a remote area where there aren't many Sikhs. So when it comes to Sangat is your company, right? So who you are interacting with, right? So if you're at home and you have no Sangat, then make your phone your Sangat, right? But make it good Sangat though, right? So even for many people in this room, myself as well, when we came into Sikhi, myself, it was mainly for YouTube. I didn't just come to listen to Katha. I listened to Katha at home in my own time, right? Just for an hour a day, every single day is my routine. After Reda Sahib, 1 hour of Katha. And if you do that for like 1 or 2 months, you can learn so much about Sikhi just by listening to 1 hour of Katha a day for a few months. And if you go on our channel, there's so many playlists. You've got the Japji Sahib playlist, the Travel Life Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, the Waheguru course. You've got so many playlists, whether that's English Katha, Punjabi Katha. You just type in any Gyani or Mahapurush's name on YouTube and you'll find it. So if you can't find Sangat in your local area, then use the internet to help you. But if you do have Guru Sahib Ji there, you have a Gurdwara Sahib that's local to you, then go to the Gurdwara. Have darshan of your Guru. Speak to your Guru. Right? Because the same thing that a lot of people fall into is Sad Sangat is not a person. Right? So very important thing for whoever's watching on Instagram on the Sangat here. We're not here to join to people. And it goes back to Bhai Sahib Ji as well, that their vichar that you can see, the parachar that they did was always, don't join to me, join to Guru Sahib Ji. And they always give that famous thing with the hand, right? That don't look at where the hand is, the person who's pointing the finger, look at where the finger is pointing, basically to Maharaj, right? So that's the main thing, right? Everyone's gonna go. Right? But Maharaj says, Naam Rahiyo, Sadhu Rahiyo, Rahiyo Guru Gobind. That only Naam is gonna remain. That Naam, Hunavatte har Naam na bijyo, agge pukha kya khai. That if you don't plant God's name now in your heart, then what are you gonna do afterwards? Then Saad Sangat, to do Sangat of great Guru Sikhs. Right? By doing this Sangat, we don't just sit there, we take something away and we apply into our lives. Like we said downstairs, that inspires us to go home and that I want to wake up in the morning. Right? I've heard people wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. What's this about? Well, I've heard about 3, 4 o'clock, Amrit Vela 3 to 6. But what about 2 o'clock in the morning? What's the difference there? 1 o'clock. Right? Naam rahyo, sadhu rahyo Guru Gobind, and our Guru will always remain with us. So when it comes to Sangat, do Sangat of your Guru, do Sangat of that thing that's going to bring you closer to your Guru. If you can't find people around you, then child, that's Mara just put you there for a reason, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. Okay? Just use what you have. You've got a lot of things available to us today. Hanji, VG at the back. Hanji Waheguru Ji. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Difficult, obviously going against the mainstream and taking that stance. They were talking about situations in the worst way possible. Like you took a stance against that. I'm really proud that you guys did that. That's what I wanted to say.
Maharaj Kirpa.
Guru, just to add, especially with the praise coming our way forward, we're just filling a role right now. If these organizations, Guru Kirpa, will be running for a long, long time yet, and next will be somebody else, and it'll be somebody else. So let's make sure that we're focused as much as on the mission itself and our goals as a Panth, as much as we are on kind of what's going on right now, and attaching that to individuals. We're just fulfilling a role right now, and let's all take responsibility to be as involved as we can. And, so the responsibility is spread across the Sangat.
There was a question through social media about the Amritsar Center, update on Amritsar Center. Basically, Amritsar Center is the commitment that Jagraj Singh made to the Sangat, and we have responsibility to uphold it. And we've been trying our best to find ways through impossible maze of Indian bureaucracy for the last 2 years. And we've been stuck behind the red tape, which is obtaining permits and kind of all the right paperwork. And as soon as we can give comprehensive update with all the details we can without jeopardizing any process that's happening currently in India, the project is not on hold, it's in process. So the accounts are clear. So whatever the update was, the last update we have posted with all the financial breakdown, this still stands the same. So no money's gone anywhere. All the funds that have been raised, they've been accounted for. And as I said, as soon as we can give full update to the situation, I mean, our intention is still the same, to continue with the project, to build it as close to what Jagraj Singh's vision was. As it stands now, it might not be possible to do just what he wanted, but we want to fulfill it as much as close as possible. Just to summarize, we have purchased the property, which is about 100 meters away from the main plaza. So that's property been purchased. And if you look at the last update that we've given, I think it was 2018 summer. I'm not sure, but we've given the breakdown for the finances, and this all still stands the same. But it's just problem now with building the actual center. I hope this answers the question. Hanji.
Questions online. So they're asking, why was the academy stopped? And maybe I think they're asking, is it going to be permanent? So they're asking about volunteering. So maybe you can give some.
Okay, I'll answer the which one for volunteering. Okay. So basically, Sikhi Academy, it was run in one of the Gurukars in Midlands, and there was kind of change of relationship, I would say, and we tried to find a new place for the academy, and we were not able to find something that kind of suited the length of the course, the premises and everything, the facilities. And we have for that year we transferred it to North America, and that completely didn't work because we didn't get enough students. There was no interest from the from Sikhs to basically join, to make that commitment. And I mean, it was a concept of Jagraj to kind of do it in that way, so where you take out 6 months and then you commit to doing prachar. But even in the 4 years that we have had the academy, really we had really 2 people who came out and became actual pracharaks for the charity out of probably 20 that joined. So you can see that it's a big investment on our side, and it's a huge commitment on a personal level for the people who want to do it. And it kind of didn't match. Jagraj had different vision, different project, which maybe we will take up in coming years. The project was that after school, people who are 17, 18, they could take a gap year, and it was kind of like a gap year Vidyala / Sikhi camp / mega Sikhi experience, which sets you up for life. But that was his kind of like a upgraded vision of Vidyala. So, I mean, Guru Kirpa, we can do it maybe one day if we get the right people, right sort of facilities and everything lines up. It will be brilliant, because I think the whole Vidyala was that Jagraj was looking for something like that when he was younger. When he got into Sikhi, he was like, but where do I learn it? I speak Hindi, I don't speak Punjabi. I can read Hindi, I can't read Punjabi, I don't know anything. I know his question was, where do I learn it? And then he ended up going to India and, like sort of stumbling his way around. So Vidyala was that kind of, ready for people like him. If you want to learn here, come here. This is all done for you. And obviously, Sukhdeep Singh Virji done a good job and taken the course, made the commitment. And he is with us now. So, I guess we'll wait and see what happens.
Just one small thing, then I'll come over to you. So Amritsar project, Basis of Sikhis, Academy, volunteering and stuff, these are all different, projects that we've had or that we have at the moment. Just one thing that comes to mind, because sometimes, people may think, oh, look what's happened, this is stopped or this is on pause. But the way I look at it, you just have to look at it a different way. So something that was drilled into me a long time ago is that everything is Maharaji's perfect plan. So for everything that's happening, it's a perfect plan. ठीक है समाज से जी जंत सब सरन तुम्हारी सर्ब चिंद तुद पासे जो तुद पावे सोई चंगा एक नानक की अरदासे के Maharaji, whatever you're doing is great. Right, so that's just my own sharda. Okay, everything that's happening is happening for a reason, and it's Maharaji's perfect plan. Right, so when it's meant to happen, it's going to happen. Maybe right now isn't the time, but it will happen. Right, because at the end of the day, we're just Maharaji Sevadars. Wherever we do it, someone else will do it, right? It's like a little plug, which is like, if you look at Seek to Inspire, they've got a lot of young Singhs learning, right? But there's one Singh from Scotland, I forgot his name, Jasdeep Singh. His prachar is really good, right? If you go onto YouTube and just type in Seek to Inspire and you watch their videos that they're doing now, like I speak to one of the Singhs from them a lot from Seek to Inspire, and I say, this Singh is great. And they're doing prachar of things in Sikhi that we don't really learn about, which is post-Guru period, as in after 1709. So there's a lot of good things actually happening, right? But maybe it just takes time, and maybe Maharaji has their way of bringing things together, right? So sometimes you have to take a break. We have to slow down a bit. Maharaji slows us down, but honestly, it's their perfect plan. At the end of the day, Raj Karega Khalsa, right? If Maharaj said it, it's going to happen, right? It's Karam Khan Ki Bani Jod. If Maharaj said it, it's going to happen. Whether it happens now, whether it happens later on, it's going to happen. Okay? So just do what you can towards it. And look, we have to meet Vaheguru. That's why we're all here. Don't forget that as well. Okay? All these questions, we're here to meet Vaheguru, innit? So that's the most important thing. Right? You're here to meet Vaheguru. Then everything else is Naam Simran Fir Paropakar. Okay? We've come here to meet Vaheguru, then help others. Right? Sarva Dharam Mehisrest Dharam Harko Naam Japa Nirmal Karam. The highest thing you could do, the highest way of living, Dharam, that Guru Gobind Singh Ji gave to us, Dharam Achalavan Sant Ubaran. To start this Dharam that Guru Gobind Singh Ji wise to say, to drop an arm and to do good actions. Sorry for add that in. Pavanveer Singh. God, didn't you know that?
Political ideology. So the question was, did Bhai Sahib have a vision of a certain political ideology when it comes to Raj Karega Khalsa? Very deep question. I can't really answer that, but what I can say is kind of repeating what I said earlier. And Bhai Sahib really emphasized us all taking responsibility. He encouraged us getting Pantik Sikh Soch, being involved in all spheres of anything that can kind of influence our direction. So whether that's Sikhs becoming MPs, getting involved in any other kind of schemes or areas, but of course maintaining that Pantik Soch. So I guess that's one angle to it. In terms of political ideology, I think, that's a lot of video watching, and perhaps you can come up with your own. I don't think it explained that explicitly. Panji, do you want to add any more? But yeah, just take responsibility for ourselves, and any area you want to get involved yourself, do it. But let's remember kind of, that Pantik Soch and keeping Guru Sahib at the front of our thought. Any other questions? How can people get involved?
So you can get involved with volunteering by in many ways. You can message us on Facebook. You can email us at info@everythings13.org. Otherwise, social media is probably what people usually do, Instagram or Facebook, and just let us know where you're from and what seva you'd like to do. Or just another thing you do is come to the programs and speak to us in person, right? Because we're literally up and down the country. We're going Belfast in April as well, right? So literally all these places never been to before, right? So there's opportunity for people to do prachar everywhere. So contact us for that. Link on the website, baseofsikhi.com. You can go on there as well. If you want us to even come down, you can request a speaker and come down and do some prachar in your local area.
There are many ways to get involved. Like few of the obvious ones is to have a set up stall in the local Gurdwara and just tell people about the YouTube channel, because ultimately this is the main resource that Jagraj Singh created. There are different things like setting up maybe Kiddie Sangat, which is play group for younger kids. There are courses that can be facilitated by local people. So I mean, there are a lot of ways, different ways, and different projects.
For anything concerning the Sikh Press Association, media@sikhpa.com is our email address. Do get in touch. Do bear in mind, though, we're not just a platform for you to put your own opinion on. I would say the vast majority of everything that we put out there is factual reporting, or else doing the actual legwork for Sikh organizations in terms of connecting them with the media. So bear that in mind. Although I will say there's one area that I have been discussing where we can kind of get support from if anyone has expertise in this area, because it's not as easy as you may think, and that's working on Wikipedia pages. So we've had two different Sevadars connect with us about setting this up for Everything's 13 and about Bhai Jagraj Singh. Actually, Bhai Jagraj Singh refused to have a Wikipedia page in his name. But I think, right now it's probably necessary. But if anyone is particularly skilled in that area, that's just come to mind. You do get in touch, and we can hopefully set up some good server for you.
Actually, bro, just very quickly. For some of us that are still kind of annoyed about the documentary, is there like a complaints procedure or something that you're doing that we can write to the BBC? Also, I would be, on a personal level, I'd really like to see Everything's 13 do a documentary or a presentation on Bhai Sahib's Jeevan. You guys know him really more than anybody, so I would really like to see that. There's no point, if there's somebody's done that, then I'm sure there's a lot of Sangha that would be really interested in seeing that. So.
In terms of complaints, we haven't asked anyone to complain, but if that's what you wish to do, the BBC does have a complaints page you could go to. If anything, I would suggest this, just keep it to what was factually missing rather than kind of personal opinion. So, you know, the lack of balance on certain topics that were featured there and their relevance when we're talking about the legacy of Bhai Jagraj Singh. But you can easily just Google BBC complaints and that page will come up, and it's very simple to go through. We are in discussion with other Sikh organizations about connecting with the BBC for kind of addressing longer term issues, because there's been another incident in the last few months where a prominent Sikh speaker has felt their depiction or their storytelling of Sikh history was censored because it included aspects which, you know, the wider communities might not feel was appropriate for whatever reason. So we're having that discussion, and we'll definitely be speaking to seniors at the BBC about this. Sorry, what was the other point? Documentary about Bhai Jagraj Singh. Just say watch this space, yeah. So, is there anything else? That's it, thank you.
And you might finish it off.
Does anybody have any burning questions? Okay, I think we finish here. Thank you everybody for taking time out. Thank you for all the questions from through social media. Please forgive if we made any mistakes or said anything out of line. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.